and I just realized it was muted. But hey, good to see you, Talos Mobius. But no, anyway, this is Blue Gamer Bluecast Morning Show. I'm your host, Adam Blue, 30-plus year video game enthusiast and industry analyst. And man, it's one of those mornings because the kids don't have school, so I'm a little lazier getting up, doing my thing. I hadn't even had my walk. Normally I'd walk the youngest to school and then walk around the school. And no, it didn't happen this morning, so I'm dragging. But there's stuff to talk about, that's for sure. So yeah, let's jump into it. Well, I think there's stuff to talk about, I wonder if with, this holiday week, even though I'm still working, I'll be off, Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Man, I still have work to do this week. I don't know how that is with the video game industry. I don't remember all the time. I want to say news is generally slow because we had the announcements of the video game award nominees or whatever. Hey, Ultronymous Jam Killex, good to see you guys too. Glad you're here. And I was even thinking over the weekend because at first I was like, you know what, I could see Shadow of the Erdtree being Game of the Year, but thinking back, and I would even say, yeah, personally, maybe I would call out a DLC. But when it comes to it being a celebration of gaming, I think they should reserve that for, best expansion or DLC of the year. Because I really think there's a lot of other video games that could have been in the Game of the Year that are not. Like excuse me, I'm even thinking the Game Awards, which again, here's the thing, it's called the Game Awards. There's a lot of money behind it, so the optics are there. It's very commercialized. This is where people that are even non-hardcore gamers look and they can kind of get the temperature of the industry. And sometimes I don't think it's the best, representation of gaming. Let me see this. Talos Smokes, I know that this is not Gundam-related channel, but the God Gundam was announced to be released soon. Oh, for GVO2. Well, that is video game-related in terms of DLC. Yeah. Best ongoing game would actually be Gundam Battle Operation 2. It would be. It 100% would be, but again, the Game Awards thing is a very commercialized, thing. From what I recall, this is literally the only DLC that's nominated for an award. Exactly, ironically, they had that category last year. That's weird because, so here's the other thing. I think they're trying to somehow curb, and I don't think they should do this, controversy, where there isn't controversy. It's just that you're then kind of playing into the online grifting because, in my opinion, Star Wars Outlaws should be nominated for Game of the Year. I'm going to get into a little bit of that here in a second. But then there's this other game that at first I thought it was a good idea, but over time I'm like, no, Balatro. Right? Balatro. I like that game. It's like a solitaire roguelike. But the reason I've kind of went back on thinking it's okay to be Game of the Year or is because while it's fun, it's really just an addicting game. It's like the reason people eat sugar or things that are sweet is not because it has any substance or value to it. It's because of the receptors in our mouth and our brain. We get that chemical and we want more. And that's fine. There are things we do. Even video games in general release chemicals when we play. But Balatro was just that. It's playing a solitaire game where there's just random cards. And that doesn't take away from how good Balatro is. I think Balatro is a ton of fun. But I don't think it's the type of game that would be a Game of the Year. Anyone could really sit down and formulate an addictive game. Because that's really, at the end of the day, what Balatro is. And usually people that talk about how addictive it is and how they have to stop playing and they're playing it too much. Because, and again, I don't want to take away from the game, but I personally wouldn't classify that as a Game of the Year. Now, maybe there's some other aspects, like maybe game direction. And again, this is kind of going against what the Game Awards does, but game direction, what is it that they're trying to do with the game or unique things to do? Even maybe around best indie game. Excuse me. But, and then, yeah, wait, was Dead by Daylight nominated for ongoing? Because that would be another good example. Again, I haven't played much Dead by Daylight. I think, actually, Ultronymous and I played the other night. And I don't even think it. Oh, it got zero nominations. Yeah, I think we played Friday night. Yeah, because it's showing up here on the 22nd. But anyway, that was what I was thinking about over the weekend because I was, listening to podcasts while playing some games, and it really made me think like the Game Awards is an optics thing. A lot of people that are not hardcore gamers are gonna see it, and so they're gonna want it to be. Hey, let me do something real quick, actually. Check, check. This happens every once in a while where the audio levels are off, but you guys can still hear me. So anyway, let's go into what I've been playing. So I wasn't playing Grand Theft Auto 5. Again, that was my son. I think sometimes when he's loading it on the Xbox, it just, you know. Or I think he was accidentally playing it too. I think he told me on my account, which I don't mind because I don't really even play it. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so Star Wars Outlaws. And now, actually, I want to bring up the Ubi Connect profile here, where it shows that. So I've played it for 27 hours, 30 minutes, 90% main game completion. So a couple things. 27 hours. It's interesting. It feels like I have barely even touched the game, even though it's saying I have 90% main game completion. But when they're saying main game completion 90%, that has to do with the main quests, which from what it's come to and what it seems like is it's kind of a short story in that main quest, whereas the rest of the worlds, because there's a lot, has so much. I could see myself putting in another 30 hours just to complete everything else. There's so much to it. This is probably in my top spot of game of the year. I played it when it came out, loved it. When I heard that they're going to revamp everything, I decided to wait to then play it, so with that, on one hand, they've really made a lot of streamlined a lot of the gameplay elements and the controls where it feels a lot more smooth, like very well. Like it's when I talk about Metal Gear Solid 5, Helldivers 2, the recent Tomb Raider games, those controls are just fantastic. That's what this game. Oh, and The Division. Yeah, I have to like make the poster or the cover form in my head to get the name of the game. The Division, which was made by this developer. I love the Division games because of the controls and the combat. And it's in this game. So what they then did with the update, and I think it's for sure because of how far I got over the weekend and what I was doing over the weekend, they really just made the game easier. At the end of the day, I feel like the original intent of the game was more of a survival in the Star Wars world. And now it's kind of shifted to more of just experiencing action in the Star Wars world. Because now when I go to an Imperial installation, which are some of the funnest gameplay elements, when there's an Imperial base you have to infiltrate, I could just like run in with my guns, shoot guys, throw bombs, have Nix go do stuff. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do in the world. But I don't have to worry about dying. Now, originally, when I would run into an Imperial installation, I would die so fast. I would have to duck. I would have to think. I would have to, like, especially if you alerted them, like, they would be able to catch on to you pretty quick, even from far away, and then get the alerts going, more troopers coming. You'd see shuttles land, troopers come out, and it was, like, so tough that I would die over again and retry over and over. But I can understand where that is not helping this game because of being a Star Wars game first. It is a more mainstream game. And while I think the Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games, you could say, are kind of hard, they're very linear and hand-holdy, so you're kind of... the game is guiding you, whereas in Star Wars Outlaws, it's all survival. You have to just try to survive, try to use the equipment, the things you have, figure out how to survive in any given situation, and you have to think about your attack. So So I guess it's interesting how they've changed the game quite a bit, but I still think it is the best game of the year. And I wonder if they're not talking about it in the Game Awards because so many people on social media have come down on it. The Game Awards relies on social media in terms of, they make tweets asking people, what do you think of the nominations? And then, and I think it's disappointing that that has to happen. But yeah, they are just, I feel like some of these games aren't getting noticed because of some of like the online discourse. And I think, and I was talking about this yesterday because like Outlaws, I don't think is a DEI game to a degree. Like I do think they were conscious of, well, let's add some inclusive elements in here, but it doesn't change the game because there are some areas that are pretty interesting where, and I talked about these yesterday on my Gundam live stream where I'd done this one mission where I saved this guy and he goes, good, now I can get back to my boyfriend. And, it was like, okay, that was kind of random to say when we're like in a space station and you're a criminal and all this like stuff. But I guess at the same time that could be world building. But it was right after that I meet this human girl that I have to meet to find this guy that can help fix my speeder. And she's talking to me about her partner, which is right next to her and was a female human too. And again, nothing wrong with that, but that was just kind of obvious when people are trying to say, oh, this is a DEI game. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. But it's like, okay, well, there's actually an instance of where they kind of had two missions in a row where people were talking about their same-sex relationships that had nothing to do with the story. But then I try to flip it and be like, well, that's maybe cool world building because this game is an open world game where you could do things in any order kind of except for those missions, but you can run around and learn more about things. So and in one part of it that I even liked and I thought it added character was when Kay, you're a female character, there's I think two, I've come across this twice, where if you have to talk to a shop owner that's also a female that looks your age, you tend to flirt back and forth, which I think adds to the world building. But anyway, just kind of an interesting thing I'd like to add because I don't want to hold that against a game. But it's like when people are complaining about it, I know what they're getting at, but they're almost being too rude or negative about it. Let me go back to this chat real quick. There's some cool chat going on. Yeah, about multiverse. Okay, Tal is saying the nominations hit mostly games that touch mainstream in a way or another. Yeah, and while I get it, I think that does a disservice to video games as a whole. And then yeah, multiverse being nominated. Like, look, that it had its time. It was kind of a fun game, but it's really not that popular. But WB has money to advertise. Transformers Reactive was announced last year, and everyone pretty much forgot about it. For example, so it's not a. Oh, I forgot about that too. Let's see. Most anticipated still just feels wrong to me. Yeah, because that is definitely like a pay-to-play thing. And it's interesting because we go through these cycles ever since I, was on the internet looking up games in the late 90s and early 2000s where the journalists are like, no, we are not getting paid to say certain things. And then all of a sudden the Jeff Gerstmann controversy happens where he got fired because he gave a game a low review score when they were paid to give it a high review score. So it's like, oh, it's obvious then that happens. And then you keep hearing, oh, no, that doesn't happen. And then lately we've been hearing that kind of come up again. And so with all the money that goes behind the Game Awards, it's like the disappointing thing about it where, yeah, some of this, we don't really know what's genuine or authentic. Let's see. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink did not get anything either. I want to say they did. I think Grand Blue Fantasy got nominated for something. Unless I'm thinking of the other, but I remember, yeah, that got nominated for something. I like JRPG relationships better. You just get offhand dialogue from two separate NPCs, and if you paid enough attention, you can realize they're together without being overly told. Oh, Relink Versus got nominated. Okay, but yeah, Ultronymous. Yeah, that's what I've always been used to in games in the past, where a relationship wasn't really a big deal unless somehow it like was part of the quest line, or in the past there's even been more controversial things happen in games, but the story's just done well. I remember when I was reviewing comics, we were being told to be gentler with our reviews to keep the early access. It became an internal debate between us. And subtlety, GM Kill X, yeah, exactly. But yeah, with that, it is interesting because, even with my relationship with Bandai, it was, a specific person though, but I was dogging on them not releasing Gonna Break a 4 on Xbox, and that was a mistake. And he didn't like that, so he cut my access, which is weird. I no longer watch the Game Awards for anything beyond game announcements. Yeah, same here. It's really what I'm there for. And you will even notice, I think they did it last year, where they kind of quickly go through who wins what, and then if it's like a main thing, a spectacle, they'll have them come on stage. Anyway, I hate to dog on it and be mean, but it's one of those things where I thought and again, Jeff Keighley's probably a cool guy, but it's like that money trail of, okay, let's do it this way, and you get deeper into that, and who knows? With me, if someone came to me with a bunch of cash or like, hey, we'll support you, here's some money, like how that could change me, and I'm just maybe luckily in a position where I'm not having money thrown at me, so. That flute guy. Dude, I still can't believe they had people who won awards with like a 30-second countdown before being shoot off. Yeah, that's the thing too, because it's like they need more time for the ads, the sponsored parts. And then real quick, other stuff, I was playing more of the Raiden Nova. I wish I played it more. Only 2 hours, that doesn't seem too long, but that game is fun. Again, it's a shmup, but it also is survivor-like. And I can't actually believe how well it plays. And then I was trying to play Star Wars Outlaws on the Xbox because it does have the option to upload your save to the cloud, so then on another machine you can download it. But from what I read online, 50-50 chance it even works. It gives me an error. I read online that I got an error, but some people say over time it works. So I don't know. I was just hoping to, play here on it's a gaming monitor, so it's like got the refresh rate, VRR, everything. And then in the living room, I don't have the highest end TV in there, but it's a big screen, chill on the couch. Too bad that didn't work out. Okay. Let's see. And yet some of the game releases had a good 5-minute screen time. Or game announcements, yeah, right, where they really show a lot, or they have someone talk about the game for a while. Pre-rendered teasers for a game not coming out for 2 years. Oh my gosh. Whenever, they announce a new game and it's just some pre-render video and not even anything. Okay, let's move on to gaming leaks and rumors. So a lot of PlayStation content is being prepared. Let's see what that means. But don't they usually do a December thing? A showcase, yeah. The illusion, yeah. I don't think there is a showcase, but we'll see stuff at TGA for sure. Shinobi also said we have a stacked first party year in 2025. The TGA stuff, yeah. Maybe that's what it is then. Maybe it's just Game Award announcements and not necessarily a showcase. But I want to say they do a December showcase. Let's see what else is going on. Bloomberg, Sony is working on a standalone handheld game machine to attract more gamers to its PlayStation community. Rival Switch. So this is where that makes sense. Sony needs... I've been saying for a while, Sony, we all have been. Ever since the PSP and Vita, we've loved those. We want another one. They came out with the Portal. Doesn't really do exactly what we want, although it's the right direction. And then, that made me think, especially with the Switch 2 around the corner, if Sony wants to... It's like, I think Sony can make a portable console and it could be fairly successful. But I think there's opportunity for them to directly compete with the Switch. I know it's Nintendo, but hey, Nintendo fans, or I should say the mainstream market, is willing to drop Nintendo if it's not interesting. Think of, apparently the Super Nintendo didn't do anywhere near as well as the NES. The N64 did okay, but then the GameCube didn't do well. And then the Wii did amazing, but then people were like, Wii U? And then dropped Nintendo. So that's what's very interesting. You have a mainstream market, but if you do things wrong, they could be uninterested. So I think what Sony is trying to do is really, and that's the thing Sony has. I think they have a more dedicated mainstream audience, whereas Nintendo just has a more readily available mainstream audience. You know, it's like, especially when it comes to family and kids, it's like video games, Nintendo. Nintendo is portable. That's kind of an easy thing to do. Pokemon's on there. So PlayStation would have to do a few, and that's the thing. Sony needs to have games that people are going to want to play on the go. I think Astrobot was an attempt, and I like Astrobot. That's probably in my top 5 game of the year. But it's no Mario, it's no Pokemon in terms of like, I think they messed up with Astrobot by making it a gamey, like a speedrun game. And when I say a gamey game is because with Mario, while it has those elements of like try to beat the level as fast as you can, doing it a certain way, a kid can also sit back and just take in all what it does. Astrobot, while the beginning of the game is kind of that, where you can kind of take in what you're doing, after you go, it's like, okay, puzzle after puzzle, timed puzzle after timed puzzle. Like, you don't really get a chance to breathe, take in the game. They need an Astrobot that is an adventure platformer and not a speedrunning game. It's very interesting that they went that direction with this because, you know, I don't know. Let's see. I still have my PSP. Hopefully we'll get something like that. The Vita was not as successful as the PSP as far as I'm aware. Yeah, I don't think so. I think people loved the Vita, but the PSP actually had more of a success. I loved them. I had the PSP. I had the Vita. You know, the games that were on there that you couldn't play anywhere else. I still have my Dissidia Edition PSP that mostly works. It just can't hold a charge. And I guess that's the problem with devices like this over time is sometimes they just don't work. Let's see. Sony Group Core is in the, or Corp, I always mess that up, is in the early stages of developing a portable console that would play. And we've heard this, though. The product is aimed at expanding Sony's reach and contending with Nintendo for the portable gaming market. So going back to what I was saying, if they want to compete with the portable gaming market, they need to have those fun portable games. They need to have a monster catcher game. And that, it might not have to be that specific, but they need to do that. They need to bring back some of their older IPs, too, that we saw through Astrobot that they're successful with. So, Pursuit Force and the different variations of PSP, Star Wars Battlefronts, The Force Unleashed are so much fun to play. If I remember correctly, that game Pursuit Force, if I remember, I was part of a gaming forum where one of the mods there got picked to be a character in that game, which is crazy. But yeah, the PSP Battlefronts, it was just awesome to have that in handheld mode. I remember that being incredible. Let's go look at some other stuff here. Persona 6 could currently be in the localization stage. I don't really play those games, but I know those are popular. Family Boards posts talking about the Switch 2 release date and hints at the next Pokemon games after Gen 10. Actor Chris Judge teases God of War announcements for the next 2 weeks. Okay, well, that makes sense with the Game Awards coming up. This is interesting. Valve introduced several NVIDIA-specific and VR-specific improvements into Proton 9.0. Okay, so while it's good that they're doing that, I guess. Okay, so at first I was like, why would they bother with NVIDIA? They should be making their own layer. But I guess it makes sense for them to just have that support for other hardware. But I think Valve is in a place where they can start making their own software renderers and all that, especially because it's Linux, where you could use any hardware, but then there's that software layer that helps with, you know, the frame generation or whatever. Maybe that is happening behind the scenes. They'll announce that later. Yeah, some information about Half-Life 3 or Half-Life X, which is very interesting. That would be cool if that's a game that's in the making. You know what? I played a bunch of Half-Life Alyx finally after not playing it for a while, and it is fun, But what's interesting is it's only fun in context of it being VR, because it's more of, whoa, I'm actually moving in VR. I'm actually shooting in VR in the Half-Life world. But if that was not a VR game, it would kind of be boring, because it would be just, okay, here's a room, do this stuff, move on to the next. But even in VR, once that wears off, even my brother was saying the same thing. We just kind of stopped playing Half-Life Alyx. It didn't give me what I wanted to keep going. So, and that's what happened with Half-Life 2. I liked Half-Life 2, but the expansions were just like, where's it going? And Half-Life 1 totally changed first-person shooters for me. Oh, I remember when that first came out. That was insane. The people talking, and the beginning was like a movie. Oh yeah, this is funny. So a streamer got an email that might indicate the Switch 2 release, because it's saying about a game coming out first quarter 2025 on all these consoles and Switches. You know, and I'm sure these companies that have games that are coming out have known about the Switch 2 for a while, because Nintendo has surely, as they've moved their release dates, have had developers be able to work on the kits. But I'm sure it's more of, you know, they have NVIDIA hardware specs, not like maybe the actual unit. So again, first quarter 2025 then just makes sense. They've always released consoles like in that March, April time frame. So we'll see. Ooh, Sniper Elite's Battle Royale game has canceled as Tencent pulls funding. So I didn't realize they were doing that. I like Rebellion a lot. The Sniper Elite games are fun. I'm not a person that likes sniping, but you don't have to snipe in Sniper Elite. That's what I like. It's just good. It's Metal Gear Solid 5 type of action. Rebellion higher-ups implied in meetings with staff that funding was pulled due to disastrous launch of Firewalk Studios' Concord, which caused Tencent to get skittish about some of its projects. So it's very interesting. So Rebellion has made games that don't feel like Sniper Elite. They actually know how to make a whole bunch of different games. And it could be a lot of what was behind this game had a lot of what was behind Concord. So it's very interesting. Although that's the thing that doesn't make sense to me, because if they were just doing Sniper Elite, like, you know, they've got the new one coming out in January. The game, it's interesting because when you play Sniper Elite, like let's say you're on a map, an enemy that's a player can actually infiltrate your map and try to kill you, which is actually pretty fun. And so the Battle Royale, I guess it could just be at the end of the day, what is the gameplay loop? Oh, everyone just fights and then there's a winner. Whereas in Sniper Elite, the gameplay loop is more of, you have this whole map to explore. The secrets are everywhere. Different weapons are everywhere. And I really think this kind of goes back to whether it's Fortnite, whether it's Overwatch. These games are in the multiplayer online genre, but they are not a genre themselves that you can just mimic. I mean, it can happen. It's possible. In fact, PlayerUnknown's Battleground is a battle royale, but I think over time, you got to do different stuff. People aren't going to care, and that's the unfortunate thing with Overwatch or Concord. People just did not care. I do think we need to cut back on battle royales. Sometimes they rarely do something new. Yeah. Okay, good. You get it too. And even like Halo was going to have a battle royale. They pulled out on that. Autonomous Dude, I'll never forget when Skyforge, the free MMO, added battle royale. It got put to be reworked out. Reworked after a month and has been gone for years. Oh, wow. Yeah, that could be what it is. It's just you can't. And so when I was talking about hero shooters like Overwatch not working, I think there are example, like, you know, with Fortnite and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, they kind of do their own thing in a way. You know, one's more realistic, one is more goofy. And, but then you have the Marvel Rivals that's coming out, and I think that works because it's Marvel. So I think people are going to be there for Marvel, but we'll see if the gameplay allows it to hold up. I think battle royals aren't necessarily bad like the My Hero Academia and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure ones. I did not know that existed. A JoJo's Bizarre Adventure battle royale. Yeah, I guess if they're unique, that works. Huh, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to check out a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Battle Royale. Never heard of it. It's Japan exclusive, of course. That's how it always is. But anyway, guys, that is it. I have to get to work. Yeah, I know this is that week of Thanksgiving, but I have work I got to get to. So, all thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back tomorrow too. So, peace out.